Well, good Monday evening, everyone, and welcome to Bowling with the Fef, broadcasting, I guess you could say, over the internets from Wisconsin to Massachusetts to Florida and everywhere around and in between. Happy to see you this Monday night where we are sharing bowling stories all live on our YouTube channel and just having a great time doing it. This is episode 40 already. It doesn't seem to have gone by that fast, but here we are, 40 episodes in, really enjoying it, have heard some great stories. And if you're interested in hearing stories from our past guests, take a look at our previous videos. There's a bunch of them to see from all kinds of bowling people, folks who are no longer bowling, to some of the greatest of all time, to some of the greatest that are currently competing, to some local guys that I think are just interesting. And if you're interested in sharing your bowling story with us, don't hesitate. Please reach out. You can find me at bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com. That's the email address. Or you can also direct message me on Facebook. My name is Andrew Fefer, and I would be happy to talk bowling and possibly have you here on the show. So today's guest is interesting because, as we were just explaining off camera, he is kind of a fourth generation Bowling with the Fef guest. If you were here for the first episode, the very first one, you may have remembered our guest, Sam Lofquist. He challenged a friend named Austin Yankee, who is an alum of Weber International University. So Austin challenges John Janawicz, who was a few episodes ago. And if you know, JJ is at the Kegel Company, the Kegel Training Center, and he challenged tonight's guest. His name is Tom Hankey Jr., and he is joining us from Lake Wales, Florida, but originally from Great Barrington, Massachusetts. Tom, how are you this evening?
I'm doing good, Andrew. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining. Tell us the story about that background. It's really cool. I can't get over how neat that is.
Yeah, this background is a gift that my parents gave to me before I came down to college. It's a custom-made blanket that has bowling pins, and then over here on the side it has Weber logo, and then down below it says Weber International University.
Naturally, right? Yeah. We are calling this episode Hankey Hits. Tell us about what Hankey Hits really are.
Yeah, I found it very interesting that you named the episode that because in our 2019, the ITC team, that was a very popular term because just at random moments in college, I would get what they called a Hankey hit. I would get some lucky tap or break or something of that caliber, and the team would get hyped up, and then we would get all types of energy and momentum, and then all of a sudden we just kept winning matches.
Well, that's great. You must have had plenty of Hankey hits because, boy, that 2019 team was sure something. It's the beginning of the new season for a lot of players. We've got leagues starting up. So tell us what that season looks like for you. I mean, obviously you're bowling for the university there, but do you do any leagues on the side as well?
In terms of actual league, I don't bowl in any leagues, but I do bowl a lot of tournaments down here. There's tournaments pretty much every weekend. Bowling as much as I can, trying to make sure I stay sharp, especially now that the season's just around the corner. College bowling is something that we only get to try 4 times, so got to stay sharp.
Indeed. You had a nice tournament over the weekend, a runner-up finish in the Sims tournament. So for those who aren't familiar, what is the Sims tournament and how did it go so well for you?
The Sims tournament is ran by a tournament director named Bobby Sims. He's a great director in Florida. He's a bowler himself. It's a 5-game sweeper with a top 5 stepladder final. It's a simple format, but he always draws in a really good field, and it's in a really good location in the Tampa area. We get a lot of good bowlers over in that area. We were bowling on the 2021 Wolf, 34 feet, and the bowling center is pretty tricky, especially we were on the low end of the center. So, and it's Brunswick Pro-Am surface. It's a little bit older, and 1, 2, 3 don't really hook that much. But at 34 feet, we were still able to get some spark. everybody threw urethane, so the gutter went away pretty quick. But I didn't have any hang off 1, 2, 3, so I just kind of did what I needed to do and stayed alive. And overall scoring pace was still low just because that center's a little tough. But I just had something, so I went with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to get your reaction to some great performances from a couple of Weber alums who have broken through for their first tour wins over the summer. Verity Crawley won Nashville just 2 months ago, and Matt Russo took home his first PBA title in Jonesboro. I would imagine that's got to be awesome for somebody who's on the current team, and the pride that wins like that, include that come with those wins.
Yeah, we were all cheering on Verity tremendously. She works so hard. She still maintains herself not only as a bowler, as a person. She was an assistant coach for SCAD University for a long time. She prides herself on being a learner and trying to get as good as she can possibly get at her level. And then same thing goes for Matt. Matt is a special talent. Like his ball has a certain shape to it, and it just has a certain look to it that it just strikes a lot. When he has a look, he strikes a lot. And being a current Weber bowler, it's cool to see bowlers that I've bowled with or bowlers that I've seen in previous championships. Same thing when Gary Faulkner won the World Championship about 5 years ago. Watching him, I watched him on the 2012 ITC show, and being able to watch him win the World Championship was really cool to watch too.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you and Matt bowled together on the Weber team, did you envision him having this kind of success? I mean, you were on that championship team, so you were around. Actually, he was around for your victories. You were around for his.
Yeah, we all knew that Matt would win. It was just a matter of when. Like I said, he has this like little thing about him where he wants to be the best at anything that he can get his hands on, and he doesn't settle for good enough. He doesn't settle for anything except for I am as good at this as I can possibly be. And like I said, he has this magical ability to just strike on strike on strike on strike on strike. And like I said, it wasn't if, it was just when. And we're all happy that he won.
Yeah. One of the smoother two-handers you'll ever see, too. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So obviously this brings a lot of pride to you as a current Weber teammate. But, being at Weber, it is kind of late in your bowling story. So let's talk about kind of how it all began for you. And you're a native of Massachusetts, as we said. So, how did your bowling story begin? What were the circumstances that led to you starting in the sport?
Well, my parents bought a bowling center back in 2008 in my hometown. It was about 2 minutes up the road from my house. I always used to go there after school. I've been bowling, like in terms of actually throwing a ball down the lane, since I was 2. So it's 19 years. I'm 21 now. I started bowling tournaments when I was 10. So I've been doing competitive tournaments for almost 12 years now. It was just both my parents bowl, my grandparents bowl. It's just in the blood. Being around it all the time, always going there after school, being there all the time during holidays. It just always intrigued me. And it's not something that you have to have some type of special ability to do. If you're a basketball player, you have to be a certain height or you have to be a certain way. You don't have to be a certain way or look a certain way to be a good bowler. You just learn over time.
Sure. I would guess that there is probably some kind of prevailing assumption out there that if you're in the situation where your folks own the bowling center, it's got to be easy to be really good, right? But I would imagine at the same time that, we all have to work at it, right? It takes a lot of effort to be good at this sport.
Yeah. I know other kids that have the same access that I had growing up. Their bowling center either gave them um, bowling center gave them keys to the building or whatever it may be, or they had personal relationships with somebody who worked there, but they didn't really take advantage of that opportunity. And that's something that I've always believed in. You just take advantage of whatever opportunity presents itself. And like I said, I could practice whenever I wanted for however long I wanted, and I could pretty much do whatever I wanted to do. So I took advantage of whatever I had the ability to do, and 21 years later, I have a pretty good junior resume. So
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about those early days. When was it that you felt that not only were you having fun with it, but also that you were competitive, that you could, go and compete either in a league or a tournament and hold your own, if not beat the other people who were up against you?
I think a realization that I had the real ability to win, really, at first I thought it came in 2015. I won junior gold U15, and that was kind of the first, holy cow, I have the ability to probably make something out of this later in the year. And then I kind of hit a slump in 2016 because I put expectation on myself to perform as that, as opposed to just performing as to who I am as a person. And, a year of a lot of struggles, and then kind of whittled slowly into 2017. And then it basically came down to one tournament in New York, whether or not I was just going to take some time off and just try to regather myself and work on some mental things, or if I was going to continue. And I dead ran the tournament over. I just totally committed because I had nothing to lose. It was either this or nothing. And I ran the tournament over, won the tournament. A couple months later, I won Team Masters for the first time, and then everything just kind of spiraled from there.
Yeah. Did you have coaches that, took an interest in your game and your development early on, be it your parents or somebody around the center, that you'd credit with really helping you along your way, especially during some of those lower points when you weren't sure?
Yeah. Growing up, my first coach was my dad. He taught me a lot about competitive nature, and he's a high school baseball coach back in my hometown. He's been coaching high school for probably 25 years now. Um, in terms of mental development, Dr. Dean Hinnitz is a professor out of a university in Nevada. I've worked with him. The Weber team works with him a lot. I've worked with him in a lot of camps, and I credit a lot of my mental ability to think different aspects and point of views that he's taught me over time.
Sure. I was watching you on a version of the Kegel show on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and you're answering questions about your bowling, and you're sitting there in a t-shirt, and one of the first phrases on that t-shirt is "be coachable." Do you think that you were coachable all along, or is that something that you kind of acquire over time?
Uh, like I said, I really try to take advantage of every opportunity presented to me. My current coach, Del Warren, I've been working with him since I was 14, and that's one of his biggest nuances is he'll give you every secret that he knows about the game and how to be good, but you have to give him the same vibe and energy that he's going to give you. And if you're not willing to listen or take in what he's giving you, then he's not going to give you what he knows you're capable of. And that's kind of how I've always been. I'm try to take advantage of everything that's presented to me, and being coachable is the number one way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you mentioned those big wins in 2015 and 2017. Did you compete for a high school in that time, or was it just simply either not available or not something you did and you focused on your individual stuff?
At the time I was bowling at high school, high school bowling wasn't as big at the time in my area as it used to be. So really I was really the first like actual high school star to go national from my area, and then getting the wins around there definitely kind of helped, and then it actually inspired a couple of other kids from that area to try to get into it, and now I have different bowlers from Massachusetts bowling all these big national tournaments, all the Storm Youth tournaments that they run now, high school nationals that is ran every year now. A lot of the bowlers that didn't really take an interest, they kind of learned from my experiences and they wanted to see what it was like. So
That's got to feel really good, especially if they're making noise on a national level.
yeah, it's pretty cool knowing that I started a chain, because bowling in New England hadn't gotten a lot of really big stars for a couple of years, and it had been a while before somebody had really knocked on the door, and then I broke out with a win, and then the following year, somebody from the same association that I qualified for junior gold for won junior gold. Jackie Evans won junior U20 girls the next year, and then that really put us back on the map. Is people are like, "What are you guys doing? You guys have some type of special sauce? What are you guys doing? You got special secrets?" And we keep getting these we're getting a lot of really good kids now. We have Randall Dunbar made the U15 junior team a couple years ago. He had a really good run of junior gold last year. We just keep throwing these really talented players out of nowhere, and I like that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And when you start bottling and selling that special sauce, let me know, because I'm in the market for at least 1 or 2 bottles of that. So you mentioned 2015, you win the Junior Gold U15 Championship. Tell me about that tournament. What did it take to get that win, and what did it mean to you at the time?
that was a very long week. That was the infamous Chicago Junior Gold, where on the first day at the host center, the power went out during the first squad, and
No.
everything just everything just slowly started descending into madness, because of course everybody's trying to figure out what's the squad going to do to make up their time. What are we going to do to get everything back on track? And they had to do a format change. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts going on in the week. There's a lot of accusations of you're trying to rig it for this person. And after all the madness finally settled, and we finally get into match play, everything starts running smooth. Once I tell this to the junior bowlers a lot, especially now with junior gold, with how big it gets, the hardest part about that is getting out of qualifying, because you can be an elite level player, and if you just get a bad cross, or you just hit a couple of tough pairs or whatever it may be, you can be a really good player but not get as high up into the tournament as you need to get, because once you make the advanced rounds, you still have work to do to make the top 16. So,
Sure.
it's junior gold is a very hard tournament, especially now, because it keeps getting bigger every year.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Were you recruited out of high school? There's got to be at some point a connection there. And you said you had been working with Dell since you were 14. How did that relationship with you and Dell and Weber all kind of take shape?
the first time I met Dell was at Team Masters in Fort Lauderdale in 2014. And he just kind of bought into my game and who I was. I remember basically my dad told him that, listen, I've gotten this my son. I've gotten him as far as I feel like I can take him, and he wants to get to the next level. I don't feel like I can get him there. What can you help us in any particular way? And then him and I instantly bonded, because we're very similar in terms of a competitive environment. So he knows that I'm always going to be 100% with him, and I know he's always going to be 100% with me. So we work really well together.
Yeah. So in essence, does that mean that Weber was the choice and there was just no turning back, or was there a decision to make when you were finishing up high school?
No, Weber was pretty much it was pretty much Weber or nothing, because
Yeah.
I had other coaches come up to me at junior gold and talk to me about other offers, but I'd worked with Dell for so long, and he knew my game so well that if I had gone to another school, to me it would have been like starting from the bottom back up, because now I've got to learn a new coach, they've got to learn me, I have to learn different personalities, and it's just a lot of that. And you can't pass up Kegel. Like, you have free access to the training center whenever you want, and it's the only facility of its kind in the world, and they're coming out with new technology all the time. Like, you can't beat that. So, like I said, taking advantage of opportunity. Like, the opportunity, I felt that the opportunity at Kegel and Weber was going to be better than any other choice.
Sure. Before you get there, and I might have the timing off a little bit, but that 2017 Teen Masters Varsity National Championship, back in your Facebook feed, you described that as still one of the most special wins of your career, and that you get jitters still thinking about it. That's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah. Like I had said earlier, that was kind of the peak moment where I was like, whoa. Like, that was my first, like, big time, like, higher level win. And I can still, like, remember kind of going through that week, because I had learned so much about myself that week. After day one, I was in 120th, not even close. And then day two, I almost broke the 6-game record, the 6-game block record. Went from 120th to third. And then just kind of found a way I learned so much about how to bowl match play. I've learned so much about how to bowl head-to-head matches. I learned how I can control emotions. And then I learned really how to be a competitive bowler that week. And I've still learned so much more since then. But that week was kind of the base of everything that I know now.
You mentioned, about mental game and mental abilities before. I would think that would take some wild swings in the environment there mentally, because not only are you down so much and have to make up a ton of ground, but then all of a sudden you're top three. You've got to keep this thing rolling. Do you remember what your mental state was, and how you were able to to persevere through those mental challenges, really?
Yeah. I remember going into the last round of match play. Actually, I'll start with the first round of match play. First round, once you make the match play at Team Masters, Team Masters is a total pinfall tournament. 48 games total pinfall. The last 18 games are all match play. You bowl. It's round robin. You bowl everybody once, and then you bowl position round. First round of match play, after leading going into match play, I went 0-5-1. So I had tied one game and only got 15 bonus pins, and I had only dropped to fourth. I went to Waffle House with my coach, and we talked about a new strategy, and he gave me some mental tips. He told me I was just watching my opponents too much. I was too focused on the match as opposed to trying to just knock pins over, because it's basically like another tournament at that point, because there's a ton of bonus pins out there on top of another 18 games. So after going 0-5-1, I ended up with a match play record of 9-6-3. Wow. I lost the first match of round 2, and then got bonus pins every match after that in some way. Yeah. I remember going 6-0 the last round.
Okay.
That was pretty cool.
I would imagine that's a tough habit to break. The thing you mentioned about, you're watching your opponents so much, or too much, I should say. I've even seen pros that won't even, look at their opponents throwing shots. Is that a tough habit to break?
It can be. It's only it's one of those things that it's only as hard as you let it be. It wasn't as much as I was watching them too much. It's like I said, I was too focused on the match and I was too focused on what my opponent was doing as opposed to, in reality, there's no difference between that match play match and going through the qualifying just to get there, because ultimately it's you bowling the lane. And if you can beat the pair, you're probably going to beat your opponent. So that was basically the basis of our talk, is stop trying to beat your opponent, try to beat the pair, because that's ultimately your enemy. The pair is going to decide who wins and loses the match.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you take that title, your first big national title. Is it twice as hard to repeat the next year, or is it easier because you kind of know the lay of the land?
Yes to both of those, because it's so hard to repeat at that tournament. And I talked to Bryce Oliver, who won in 2019. I talked to him about the same thing. Winning the tournament once is hard enough because it's 48 games total pinfall, 18 games of match play, and 2 different patterns, and the environment is incredibly difficult. You're bowling on 7 milliliters of oil, which is about a quarter of what we normally bowl on. You're using plastic bowling balls, custom made, completely old school technology, and it's so hard to repeat in that tournament. It's easy to have success because really you just need to be able to make spares and you can have success in that tournament. But it's so round robin match play, especially, you're just trying to get the right opponent on the right pair at the right time. And having that happen 2 years in a row is unfathomable to me. And it was really cool to win it the second time.
Yeah.
Especially in Vegas.
Sure. I believe it. Take me inside, inside your mind, inside, what you felt when that last match was over and you knew you had it for the second time.
I hadn't watched the scores all week, so I had no clue where I was. All I knew was I was probably leading going into the last round. And then I remember bowling the second to last game of match play, and I'm just bowling. I'm just kind of trying to do, like I said, just trying to figure the pair out and do what I can. I'm not watching anybody around me, and all of a sudden I just hear a lot of applauding. And we're bowling in the South Point Arena, so there's 2 bays. I hear a lot of applauding on the other in the corner, the other side of the bay. So I walk over, and the kid who was in second has the front 10. And I'm like, oh, Lord. Like, where does this put us?
Yeah.
And then he gets the 11th one, and then he wrap 10s. He shoots 299. Now he gets 130. He gets 129 bonus pins. So he basically just shot 330 in one game, and I can still strike out to win my match. But I didn't really know. Like I said, I had no idea where I was in the score. So I walked up to my dad and I said, "How bad does that hurt?" And he goes, "Just get the double." I'm like, okay. So I get up and of course, I finished the match in my hard lane, but I found something, went struck out, won the match. We're waiting for position round. I happened to glance over at the scoreboard, and I had a 400 pin lead going into position round.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't even have to bowl the last game, but I won. And I was like, it didn't really click until I started bowling the game, and I'm like, I just won this tournament again. And it's a really cool feeling, knowing that you did something that difficult twice in a row. It's a really cool feeling.
I believe it. So, now you had been, with Weber for a little while there, I'm guessing, in 2018. That was your freshman year, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you come in and you've had a ton of success, in your junior career. What was it like to get accustomed to, the college game and preparing for those tournaments and, bowling with a group of guys who you probably haven't, been around for the most part?
Well, bowling for a college team is completely different than bowling singles, and I had to learn that, and that was something that took me a while to really kind of grasp the concept of. Bowling for a team, you have yourself, you have the coaches behind you, you have seven other guys behind you, and you're bowling first. You have a legitimate title on you now. You're bowling for school, bowling for Kegel. It's and the vibe is a lot different. It's not like singles tournaments where people don't usually talk to each other, and if they do, it's just kind of coffee talk. It's just kind of coffee table talk. College, getting to understand the concept of college bowling took me a couple of years, or it took me about a year. It took me honestly until about April at nationals. I kind of figured it out, and I just realized, this is college bowling. This is what I have to, because everybody's version of success in college bowling is slightly different. Everybody has to deal with themselves a certain way, because if you're just having a rough tournament or whatever and you get hard on yourself, the other team feels that, or your team feels that, and it gives confidence to other teams because you're struggling, especially if you're one of the better players. And your other team is going to try to drag you back up, and they're now more focused on you as opposed to the actual goal of winning the tournament. So handling yourself, it teaches you a lot about handling yourself, learning how to be the best version of you to the best of your ability is probably the best way to say that.
Yeah. Weber, a program with obviously a lot of history, a lot of great moments from that school. We hear a lot about what is known as the Weber Way. What is the Weber Way?
The Weber Way is our culture. It's what we live by. And the number one thing on there is being coachable, because like we said, you have the opportunity to do something that nobody else in college bowling has. We have the opportunity to train at the number one training facility in the world. You have the access to coaches that have all four coaches there have 40 years at least of coaching experience. They're all gold coaches. Ruben's in the World Coaching Hall of Fame. You can't beat the opportunity that's presented there. And there are some people that just choose not to take advantage of it. We don't judge them for that. It's a decision. They all make their choices. But eventually people like that slowly get whittled out, because it's like the rule of life. 80% of people make 20% of the money. It's the same thing, 80-20. 80% of the people do Weber Way, 80% of the people don't do Weber Way, 20% of the people do. And that 20%, those guys are together all the time. Usually by December, you can figure out who the 20%ers are. And they just kind of run themselves. Those 20% guys manage themselves, and the coaches don't worry about them. They worry about the other 80%, just making sure that they don't do anything stupid. Basically, they're college kids. Like it's the first time they're away from home. The 20%ers, they trust that we're going to do the right thing. They trust that people will, and we know that people will be people. As long as those 80%ers don't affect the 20%ers, that's all that we really care about.
Sure. And that stuff, let's face it, all starts with the coaches. You mentioned Dell. What should we know about Dell and the other coaches who guide you guys, through these tournament seasons?
Dell is a phenomenal coach. I will say that. The coaching staff, Dell Warren, Ruben Garagosian, Randy Stoughton, and Rick Wiltsey, they all do an amazing job with the Weber team, with Kegel. Like I said, they all have at least 40 years of coaching experience each. They've all coached internationally. They've all coached on world levels. They've coached collegiately. They all had something to do with the tour eventually. Dell is a very upfront, to your face kind of person. He doesn't hold back punches. He tells you exactly the truth. He doesn't sugarcoat, and that's the coaching that I like. I don't like things to be just kind of sprinkled around or like to beat around the bush. It's just like, listen, especially as a competitor, there are sometimes when you need to hear like, listen, you need to square up. You need to get better at this. You know that your weaknesses are this. Ultimately, it's their decision whether or not they actually listen to him, like I said. But all the coaches are like that too. Randy's the same way with the girls. Listen, this is how it's going to be, and if you don't like it, sorry. Like, this is what you need to do to get better. If you're not willing to do it, then I can't help you. Is
Sure.
basically the gist of it.
So we obviously see you at the tournaments. We see you guys performing, competing against other teams. But what we don't see is what happens during the rest of the weeks. What does a typical week, on campus for you guys look like?
So Weber's a pretty cool school. It's a small school. It's about 800 kids, which I like. I don't like the big city environment. Growing up in basically the middle of the woods, I'm not a big fan of large crowds of people. Typically, we have class Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, Friday. Wednesday is athletic day for the school. About 97% of the enrollment is athletics. So Wednesday at Weber is athletic day. All the teams have practices. Some teams leave for tournaments on Wednesdays. Typical week for us, we have pre-COVID, we had practice every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Sometimes we would have select teams come in, minus if there wasn't a tournament. We try to make as much quality practice as we can, and sometimes it's not on the lanes. We take a lot of time trying to teach different coaching modules, sorry.
That's okay.
Different coaching philosophies, different learning abilities, coaching. Try to learn a little bit more about the coaches and the players. There's a lot of things that we do behind the scenes that really add up at the end of the year, because especially when we have Dr. Dean, especially when Dr. Dean comes by, he's a huge influence on making the sectionals and nationals teams kind of go like this. Because at the end of the day, if we can get 8 guys to work together, that's what matters. And those 8 guys all trust each other and they believe in each other's abilities. That's what makes for a really good team. And that's what that 2019 team was.
Sure. Let's talk about that 2019 season. At the end of the season, you won the Intercollegiate SIngles Championship. What worked so well for you in that tournament?
That tournament, in my opinion, that tournament is the hardest tournament to make the finals of, because what you do leading up to that tournament really doesn't mean anything. You could be high average, you can be a guaranteed All-American, you could be leading player of the year, but to make it to the actual finals, it's a 6-game sweeper. There's no like automatic bye based on being in the top 10 in average or whatever. You have 6 games to make the top 24, and they take 6 people out of each region. So, and you're playing against really good college players. Almost every individual bowler or every individual college player ends up bowling that tournament. And, you hit 1 or 2 bad pairs, you're done. and it's hard. And on top of that, you only get to do it 4 times. You don't get to do it as many times as you want. Being able to make it my freshman year, we were bowling in New Jersey. Last game that I opened the tournament with 160. 6-game block, game 160. And I'm like, I got to bury out because I know the scores are going to be high.
Yeah.
I find a way to get I'm 80 over going into the last game, and I'm bowling with a guy that I know was the number. Just based on what I know is going around, I just have a sense that I know this guy's the number. Into the last game, I know I need to beat him by 20. He shoots 190 something. I can still shoot 220, so I have a chance. He goes spare, good count in the 10th. So now I need a mark. I need a mark ahead of him. First shot in the 10th, fling it out into the desert. I 210.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh. And I walk back, I look up at the scoreboard, I look at his math, I look at my math, and I say, you got to make it. You got no choice.
Yeah.
Get up, make the split, strike
Wow.
on the fill, make it by 2 pins.
Oh.
And then once you make the national final, you bowl 6 games to make the bracket up, and it's really just kind of like I said about the round robin match play, it's getting the right opponent on the right pair. It's 3 games total pinfall, so it's not one and done matches, which I like. The only person you're really worried, the only other person's score that matters is the other person that you're bowling. And I don't think there's an advantage of being in the top 8 personally. It's one less match. If you're one match closer to TV, that's great. But on the other side of that, it's also because you don't know what you're bowling on, it's another chance to find a strategy on whatever you're bowling. So I qualified 9th. I just missed being getting a bye. We just kept trying different strategies until we kind of fine-tuned it because we had a decent idea of what the lanes were doing, Dell and I, and we fine-tuned something, and I ran the bracket, made the show. I bowled really well in the show with having the worst look in the practice session. Like 30 minutes prior to tape starting, we get practice, and I've got the worst look in the building. We're bowling in the VIP section on the other end, and they were completely different. I've got nothing. I get over to the other center, and you can't do anything about it because once practice starts, you can't alter surfaces. You can't go polish on anything. You can't scuff anything back down. You're stuck with what you have, and you can't make an arsenal change. It's what you have is what you have. So we go over the practice pairs. I try to mimic something, and something clicked. When we got into the second semifinal, something just clicked. And I knew it clicked because I got one shot out to nowhere, ripped off of it, ripped the rack, and I was like, all right, game on. Let's go. I got something now. So.
And that was all she wrote.
Yeah.
Wow. And of course, the team is at ITC, and they end up winning the whole thing.
Yeah, that was a really long day for me. The men's singles show is the first taping, and the men's team show is the last taping. Okay. So I'm in the bowling center from 6:30 a.m. to like 9 or 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
I went back to the hotel to get lunch or to get breakfast for an hour after I won singles. That was really cool too. I get back to the hotel and everybody, the men's team wasn't there, the women's team was. So the women are all texting the guys how everything's going, and word gets out that I win, and they all gathered around outside and they're cheering going up to them walking in. We talk strategy about the TV show, what the pair's like, and then we kind of come up with a strategy for the show, and we get that show being as low scoring as it was helped us in so many ways because something that we pride ourselves on is being capable of taking advantage of anything, and we are so good at being prepared for any situation thrown at us, and we were That, like I said, that pair was so different than the rest of the bowling center. Left lane didn't hook at all, and the right lane hooked as soon as the ball hit the lane. So you're bowling on completely different lanes on top of a completely different pair on the other side of the building. So it helped us. We didn't you didn't strike a lot, but we kept our energy up, and we won. It just happens.
What's it like to to watch Matt throwing those last shots, knowing that this is it?
I'm somebody that's really good at reading body language, and I'm somebody that's really good at looking at somebody on the approach and knowing if it's close or not. Mac picked up the ball, stepped on the approach, and I said, he needed a mark, and it was going to strike. He throws the shot, whole team stands up, hands in the air. It was 10 back off his hand, and knowing that a year's worth of a lot of training and a lot of practicing and a lot of time and ups and downs, and it's a lot of satisfaction picking up the cup. And it's a really special feeling that not a lot of people get to feel, and it's awesome. It's so cool.
Yeah. Not a lot of people have a sniff at ISC or ITC. I want to mention some names here. Francois Lavoie, Brian Valenta. Both of them have won both, but they were in separate years. As far as USBC is concerned, you're the guy who did it in the same year, and the only guy.
Correct.
What is that like?
Yeah, I knew that going in, actually. I knew that I was that nobody had ever won singles and team in the same week. And that sat in the back of my head a little bit, like, that'd be a pretty cool title to have. And doing it, Gary Brown, the director of USBC Collegiate, he told me, like, it's definitely, you're the first person to ever do that. And knowing that ours, and then the year after, Caitlin Johnson and I both won Player of the Year. And we're still the only association, we're the only college program that has ever had male and female Player of the Year in the same year. So it's cool kind of being able to have that, saying that nobody else has done that.
Yeah, absolutely. You recently posted on social that it was an honor to be selected to compete in the Dominican Republic a couple years ago when you took Masters Gold. Tell me about Junior Team USA and what it's like to, compete and represent your country in a situation like that where, you're in a different country and representing the U.S.
That was a really cool week. I got coaches picked to make junior team in 2019, and that was a huge honor in itself, because that meant I knew that the coaching staff wanted me to be part of the team. They had handpicked me. And then getting the phone call saying, hey, we want to take you to Dominican Republic to bowl PAVCon. I'm like, because I was shocked, because that was my first year on the regular team. I'd made the developmental team before. That was my first year on the regular team. I didn't think they were going to actually do that. I was completely honored, and I was so grateful for that to happen. And then bowling that week, something I love about traveling is getting to know other people, other cultures, other ways of life. And that was a really special week. I made a lot of friendships while I was there. I still talk to a lot of those kids today. And winning Masters gold medal against a really good friend of mine, Cortez, that was pretty cool. Cortez is a really good player, so being able to beat him was something pretty special.
Yeah, and you took second in doubles with Anthony Nair Jr., who we now know as the Ginger Assassin, the guy who made the 710 on TV. What was it like to have him as a doubles partner, and how did you kind of feed off each other?
He's another one of those guys that I grew up bowling with, so we knew each other's games pretty well. And we're both energy fanatics. We feed off of each other's energy. And as far as him making the 710, I'm not surprised he did it. He can throw balls so hard at corner pins, and when I watched him make the 710 on TV, I was like, holy cow! But I was like, that makes sense. I mean, but bowling with Anthony is really cool. He's an awesome person. He's really funny. Obviously he's an amazing competitor. He's a great bowler. And it was really cool bowling doubles with him too. Yeah.
Sure. So along with all this college bowling stuff, you also do work with Kegel. Tell me how that started, and what makes working there and in the bowling industry fulfilling for you.
Well, my dream has always been to work at Kegel, and I got a phone call from the director of my department saying, "Hey, we're looking for a new test bowler. Would you be willing to bowl for us?" I'm like, "Yeah, definitely." So, I mean, it was only going to be a part-time position, but of course I wanted to do it because it's the first step in the door. In terms of helping me as a bowler, like I said, everybody in that facility is an expert in something, and it's so cool to hear all these different stories, all these different perspectives, all these different levels of knowledge, different expertise levels in all aspects of the sport. If you have a question at Kegel, somebody in the building can answer it to a T. And it's the base company of all other bowling manufacturers around the world. So,
yeah. When John Janawicz came on our show, he's the one who challenged you to be on this show.
Yeah.
He mentioned that your game is solid and that you had some really good success early on in your career. What does that mean coming from a guy like that who, is well known not only in the workings of Kegel and among customers, but also in the greater bowling community?
JJ has always been somebody that I've really looked up to. You and I were talking about this earlier. You can tell that he just has a true passion for the game, and it's not something that you can just fake it. He is a bowling fanatic. He loves the sport. He's been doing maintenance for over 20 years at Kegel. And knowing that somebody of his caliber sees me as a bowler like that is really a true honor.
Yeah. So, we're now on the cusp of your senior season, and you've been in the program for a few years. How do you feel that you've grown in the sport? Like dating back to when you first stepped on campus to now?
As a bowler, I've learned so much over the last 4 years. At not only just at Weber, just at Kegel itself, just off of osmosis of being in the building. You're taking in all this information, all of this amazing experience that everybody has, and it's hard to put into words because it's so cool to just listen in on conversations and just be like, wow, I didn't know that, or like, wow, I didn't think that was I've never thought of it that way, or wow, I've never I didn't think that you could do that. Like, it's cool. Like, it really is cool. And it, like I said, I've always enjoyed just listening to what everybody has to say, and then just kind of being like, well, let's see what I can do to try and do that. Or like, I wonder what happens if you do this, or like, what happens when you try this? Or because they encourage us to do that, especially the younger generation. Like, somebody has to take over eventually. So, they try to get us to do whatever we can to learn.
Yeah. Obviously, coming into a new season at a high-powered college program, your ultimate goal is to win another championship. But tell me about past that. What do you see for yourself in the sport of bowling beyond this senior season at Kegel or at Weber?
After college, I want to see what happens at Kegel. I want to see where my job presents, because what I want to do is get into JJ's department. I want to work in lane tech, traveling around the world to do lane maintenance at tournaments. Like I said, I love traveling. I love meeting new people, learning different cultures and ways of life. That's the ultimate goal. A lot of guys have asked me about going on tour. I've thought about it. It's in the back of my mind. It is a possibility. I would kind of have to see where I'm at the end of this year, because if my heart is truly dedicated to wanting to go around the world and travel and work for bowling, then that's where I'm going to go. If my heart wants to be a professional for a few years, then I'll be a professional for a few years, and then we'll take it from there. But those are the kind of the two roads. I just don't know which one exactly yet.
Yeah. When you go on a trip back home, having been to all these huge national stages, both in college and in juniors, and you go back to Cove Lanes, is it easy to get kind of nostalgic about how it all began, or is it just kind of another day in the life?
Really, when I go back home, that's where everything started. And knowing that that's where everything started really is a kind of a special feeling, especially seeing a lot of old memories and me seeing a lot of old friends' faces. And I know that I wouldn't be where I am today without that building or that environment or my parents. And they hold a special place in my heart. And I am very grateful to have it still, especially given everything that's going on in the world. And a lot of bowling centers are unfortunately getting shut down or bought out by other companies. And I'm really fortunate that it's still standing and that the building is giving me everything that it has. I'm very thankful for that.
I bet. So you've seen an episode or two of this show, and the way we go off the sheet is to ask you to challenge somebody else, and skill level is kind of irrelevant. We're looking for people who are passionate about the sport and have a unique story to tell. So, Tom Hankey Jr., who would you like to challenge to be on a future episode of Bowling with the Fef?
I would have to say a good friend of mine who just actually moved out of the state, Larry Lichstein. He has so many stories from the tour life, growing up in New England, bowling all kinds of tournaments around the country. He's talked to me a lot about different some of his stories growing up. His son Mike used to drill balls for me when I was younger. So that would be my person, Larry Lichstein.
All right. Well, Larry, if you are watching and you're interested in coming on the show, we would love to have you, a true living legend in the sport. Again, my email address is bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com. And you can find me on Facebook, too, if you'd rather. Andrew Fefer, just search for me. Shoot me a DM. We would love to have you on the show. Our next live stream is coming up Tuesday, August 31st. This one's a little bit later, 8 p.m. Central, so we hope you'll join us. Tune in, either live or on replay. But Tom, it's been a pleasure. Really appreciate talking to you, hearing your story of success both in juniors and college, and best of luck to you and the Weber team in this new season.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast.
You bet. Glad to have you. But that's all we've got today. From there, be just and fear not. We'll see you next week.